That's the thought that pinned me to the shiny tile at Nashville International, the one that kept the air from escaping my lungs when my son and his wife turned their backs and melted into the first-class lane like I was an error on a receipt. The fluorescent lights hummed. Someone's suitcase wheels clicked a fast staccato over the seams in the floor. A baby cried and then hiccuped into silence. I stood there with my purse clutched to my chest and a printed itinerary that meant as much as a paper napkin after a storm. No suitcase. No boarding pass. No return ticket. Just me, a thin gray sweater, and a voice in my head that kept repeating, "You were invited to be carried, not to come back." Tanya had smiled when she said it. "We only bought you a one-way, Mom. The return trip? You'll figure it out." And the smile wasn't cruel in an obvious way. It was the kind people wear to church when they're already planning Sunday lunch without you. They swept through security with her mother. All priority tags and rolling luggage like chrome armor. Mark didn't meet my eyes. He touched the bridge of his sunglasses like the lights were too bright for him, and I watched the back of his shirt vanish down a corridor of blue-tinted glass. That was the shape of my life right there. The backs of people I loved most moving faster than my voice could carry. I sank onto a bench near a planter full of tired rubber plants and breathed through a sting that felt too old to be fresh and too fresh to be old. I wanted to call someone, but the list of people I could call had shrunk over the years like a sweater from the wrong wash cycle. My sister's gone. My closest friend is caring for her husband post-surgery. The church ladies would come if I asked, but I couldn't bear the thought of their faces soft with pity. My pride lifted its chin, wiped its own cheeks, and told me to sit up straight. I checked that my phone was still in my hand. It was the only thing tethering me to the idea that I could still do something. I didn't scroll. I didn't look for apologies that weren't coming. I slid my palm inside my sweater instead. Felt the edge of the little white envelope tucked into my bra. "In case you ever need anything," Blake had said after the funeral, pressing the business card into my fingers with more gentleness than I expected from a man who'd once wrestled a tractor out of a ditch with nothing but a chain and stubbornness. My husband Jake had trusted him. I trust the men Jake trusted. Grief had rearranged the furniture in my life and then had the nerve to sit down and put its feet up. Jake died a quiet death. A cruel kind of quiet, like a store closing at noon for a holiday you forgot. The paramedics were kind to me in the way that made me feel like I was already an empty room. He was humming off-key in the kitchen 1 minute and then the mug was on the floor and the cinnamon stayed where it was. The funeral was short because he'd have wanted it that way, and after everyone drifted back into their lives, mine stayed stubbornly still. So when Mark came by and suggested a trip, Florida, the kids, a healing getaway, it sounded like air after holding my breath for weeks. "It's a group effort," Tanya said. "We're all pitching in." I offered money before they could ask. I sold the last set of pearls Jake gave me. I closed my palm around that cash the way some people close their eyes to pray, and I gave it willingly because that's what family does. Or so I told myself. I should have noticed the signs. Tanya's mother had a priority tag even on her carry-on, like the bag itself was more important than any of us. The first-class tickets lined up like soldiers on their phones. "We'll circle back to you after takeoff," Tanya said with a bright cheerfulness that made me feel slow. Only later did I understand that circle back is just "we won't" in a polite dress. The agent at the counter, poor woman, was careful with her words the way you handle a cracked glass you still have to drink from. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There's no return flight booked under your name." It wasn't the sentence itself that cut. It was the way she left room at the end for me to fill it with hope. That room is where I got hurt. I stood. I walked. I found them by a coffee stand under a glowing sign shaped like a mug. Tanya was angling her camera for a selfie, chin tilted to the light like the light owed her something. "The agent says I don't have a return ticket," I said to Mark. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, steadier than my insides. "Can you check yours?" He glanced at his phone, at Tanya, at me. There it was, the half-second of shame before the performance resumed. "Mom," he started, and the word had edges on it. "We figured you might stay a little longer. See some friends." "What friends?" I asked, and my voice didn't break, which felt like a small miracle. "All my friends are in Tennessee." Tanya didn't bother pretending. "You've got a phone," she said, sliding her card back into her wallet with a neat click. "Call someone. Or sell it. That'll cover a Greyhound, right?" And then the softest shrug like I'd asked her to hold my coat and it was too heavy. I looked at my son. My baby who cried so hard the first time we tried to leave him with a sitter that I turned the car around and paid the sitter anyway. The boy who used to press his small hand to my face when he had a fever and say, "Stay." He adjusted his sunglasses again. "We'll talk after we land," he said. And then he took Tanya's bag with a gallant flourish that would have been sweet if it hadn't been used on me first. They were gone. The tunnel swallowed them. The hum returned. My life reorganized itself around the empty space where they'd just been. I sat back down and took inventory like a woman after a storm. Purse light. Wallet. Lighter. A little cash. Driver's license. The emergency credit card Jake and I had kept for if the car breaks down in the night. And I hadn't used it since we put new tires on the Buick 3 winters ago. A crumpled tissue. A peppermint. The business card with Blake's name printed in sharp black letters. I traced the edges to keep from shaking. A volunteer with a red vest passed and asked cheerful, "Y'all need help finding a gate?" I smiled the way women do when the only thing we have left is our composure. "I think I'm right where I need to be," I said. It wasn't true yet. But it could be. I dialed Blake's number. My thumb hovered before I pressed the last digit like if I didn't finish I could pretend a little longer that I didn't need rescuing. The call rang once, twice, 3 times. And I was preparing my voice to say, "It's me," when it clicked to voicemail. "You've reached Blake Henderson," the recorded baritone said. "Leave it." The beep sounded like a verdict. "Blake, this is Mrs. Monroe. Jake's wife. Widow." The word still felt foreign like a dress I wasn't ready to wear. "I'm at the airport. I swallowed hard. I need to talk to you about something we didn't get to before he passed. It's important." I left my number. I thanked a machine. I hung up. The bench felt colder. I stood again because sitting made the tears too easy. "Not here," I told myself. "Not now." There's a stubbornness you earn from surviving small humiliations. It looks like dignity if you squint. I decided to walk. Moving keeps the grief from settling. I drifted past the bookshop and ran my fingers over a display of travel pillows, as if I could buy my way into comfort. I paused in front of a rack of sunglasses and saw my face in a dozen tiny mirrors. A woman who needed sleep. A woman who had loved a man for 42 years. A woman who had raised a boy who had learned from someone that kindness is optional. I almost didn't recognize myself. A memory rose uninvited. Mark at 10, cheeks flushed from a little league game. Chin trembling because he'd struck out with the bases loaded. "You don't quit just because it hurts," Jake told him, kneeling in the dust so they were eye to eye. "You look it in the face and decide who you are." Mark had nodded, serious as the moon. Somewhere between then and this morning, the lesson had frayed. I bought a bottle of water with cash I couldn't afford to spend and sipped it like it was something holy. My phone vibrated. My heart jumped. A text from an unknown number. "This is Blake. In court till noon. Sit tight. You okay? Sit tight." The word stung even though I knew he meant well. I typed back, "I will be. Call when you can." I stared at the 3 gray dots like they might rearrange my life. They disappeared. I walked some more. The airport is a world built for leaving, not for being left. Signs point everywhere except the way back to yourself. I drifted toward ground transportation out of habit, toward the promise of wheels. In the glass doors I caught my reflection again and squared my shoulders the way my mother taught me when I was 13 and hated my knees. "Shoulders back," she'd say. The world reads posture like a headline. Near the rental cars, a young woman in a bright floral blouse stood crying quietly into her phone. Her hair was slick with humidity. I slowed, not to eavesdrop but to understand the shape of my own pain. "I can't afford it," she whispered. I thought he'd help. She wiped her nose, nodded, said, "Okay," and then hung up and breathed like she was learning how. She met my eyes by accident. We shared a quick, fierce look that said, "I see you." Then she turned away and I kept moving. Outside, the Tennessee light had that cruel kind of clarity sunshine gets when you're not okay. The curb was crowded with goodbye hugs that looked like small rescues. A bus pulled up, hissed like a tired animal, and swallowed a line of people. Greyhound. I heard myself think, the way you think of a childhood street and then can't remember what the mailbox looked like. I checked my credit card balance on my phone and winced. There was enough for a bus ticket if I didn't eat and nothing went wrong. When has nothing ever gone wrong? I muttered, which made me smile despite myself. Jake used to say that, half joke, half warning, as he jiggled the faulty porch light. Plan for the flat tire, babe. A boy in an orange vest waved traffic around like a conductor. He couldn't have been older than 19. He whistled a tune I recognized from the radio, and for a second I imagined leaning over to ask him what the song was, to make a tiny, ordinary connection. But Ordinary had left with my family 10 minutes earlier. My phone buzzed again. A second text from Blake. Can you get to my office? If I can't leave, I'll have an associate meet you. Don't discuss anything with anyone until then. Then a follow-up like he heard my silence. I mean it. Anyone. The lawyer tone, firm, protective, settled me. I can get there, I typed, though I had no address yet and no plan, and the wordkin felt ambitious. A second later he sent the address. Downtown. 24 minutes by car, according to the Maps app that looks so confident, so sure of the paths people take to each other. I stood there under the big blue sky of the passenger pickup and weighed what I had against what I needed. This is the part where, if life were Kinder or a movie, a person who'd been watching would step out of line and say, "Ma'am, are you okay? Let me help." But kindness isn't choreography. It's a choice. And strangers were busy choosing their own lives, the way mine had just chosen me last. I took a breath and steered myself back inside, toward the rideshare signs. The app calculated and then named a price that made my stomach drop. My thumb hovered. Do it, I told myself. You sold your pearls. You can sell a little more pride. Excuse me, a voice said behind me, careful, like you approach a skittish animal. I turned. A TSA agent stood a few paces away, a woman close to my age with tired eyes and a kindness she tried to keep professional. She'd seen me earlier, of course she had. "Ma'am," she said, lowering her voice so it wouldn't carry. "I don't want to intrude, but are you waiting on someone?" The question had a shadow in it, the way storms have a quiet before they break. "I'm heading to an appointment," I said. It was true enough. "I'll be fine." She looked at my empty hands, at the thin sweater, at my squared shoulders that were working too hard. "Do you need a quiet room for a minute?" she asked, like she was offering a bandage without naming the blood. "I need a ride," I said before pride could stop me. The words tasted like defeat and relief. "And then I need a little luck." She nodded once, decisive. "Let me show you where the drivers don't overcharge the way they do up here," she said, tilting her head toward a lower level. "And if you need water, there's a cooler in the back office nobody finishes." I followed her to the escalator, grateful in that hollow way that doesn't feel like gratitude yet. Halfway down my phone rang. Not the cautious buzz of a text, the full brassy announcement of a call. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in years. Not since Jake and I sang too loud at a 4th of July cookout and laughed ourselves hoarse. Blake. I stared at his name and, with the escalator moving me past the point of no return, answered. "Mrs. Monroe," he said, voice steady enough to stand on. "Don't tell me anything right here. Just listen. Did Jake ever talk to you about the trust paperwork last spring?" My hand tightened on the rail. The escalator carried me into a colder slice of air, and a darker hallway where the concrete echoed with wheels and footsteps. "He mentioned something," I said. Truth swelled in my chest like a breath I'd been afraid to take. "Why?" "Because," Blake said, and the pause felt like the drop on a roller coaster. "If I'm right, your son might think you have nothing, when you might have more than he knows. Get to my office. Today." The TSA woman glanced back at me with a question in her eyebrows. I nodded like I understood anything at all. "Okay," I told Blake. "I'm coming." I ended the call and slipped my phone into my purse like it was a promise. When I looked up, the woman was pointing toward a door with a sign I hadn't noticed, one that led to a quieter curb where drivers waited without the swarm. "Here," she said. "Less chaos." "Thank you," I said, the words too small for what she'd given me. I stepped out into the strip of shade, took another breath and raised my hand for a car that hadn't arrived yet, when a familiar laugh cut across the concrete like a knife I recognized by handle and blade. I didn't need to turn to know whose it was. But I did. Of course I did. And there at the far end of the curb, stepping out of a black SUV I could not afford, was someone I had hoped never to see again. Someone who was not supposed to be in this city at this time, wearing that exact impossible smile. I froze. My breath snagged halfway in my throat like a thread caught on a nail. That laugh. I knew it before I even turned. Some sounds get tattooed on your nerves whether you want them or not. The kind of laugh that wears arrogance like a suit that says I'm not just comfortable here, I own the room. And there he was. Ethan. My husband's younger brother. Jake's estranged sibling. The ghost of a family feud that had outlived more Thanksgivings than I could count. I hadn't seen him in years, not since the fight over their father's will, when voices cracked like whips and Jake slammed the phone down hard enough to rattle the table. That's it. He's not my brother anymore, Jake had declared. And I believed him. We both did. Until now. Yet there Ethan stood at the far end of the curb, stepping out of a shiny black SUV with a woman draped in silk and diamonds at his side. His hair was whiter than I remembered, but his posture was still pure swagger, as if age hadn't dared touch his pride. And when his eyes caught mine, recognition flickered like a match on gasoline. Well, if it isn't little Blake's widow, he said, voice loud enough for passers-by to turn their heads. He always did love an audience. It's Jake, I corrected automatically, my own voice sharper than I intended. His name was Jake. Ethan's grin widened shark-like. Of course. Forgive me. Been too long, hasn't it? You look different. He tilted his head, the same way Tanya did when she sized up waitstaff like they were furniture. Life treating you rough? My spine stiffened. I wanted to walk past, to vanish into the crowd, but my feet rooted to the pavement. What are you doing here? He spread his arms wide like the whole terminal was his stage. Business, sweetheart. Always business. Nashville's been good to me. And you? His eyes slid down to my empty hands, the lack of luggage, the wear in my sweater. Doesn't look like family's been quite so good to you. I hated that he saw me. Not just me standing there, but the truth underneath. I don't owe you an explanation, I said, forcing steel into my voice. Ethan chuckled. You never did. That was Jake's job, wasn't it? Explaining away the family mess. Cleaning up after me. He shook his head with mock sadness. And look where it got him. The word struck hot like a slap. My heart hammered. If Jake were alive, he would have stepped between us, shielded me from that poison. But he wasn't, and it was my job now. Leave me alone, I said firmly. Alone? Ethan's eyebrows rose. He glanced at the woman beside him, who was too busy checking her reflection in her phone to notice the tension. Looks like they already beat me to it. The humiliation burned so fierce I almost missed the vibration of my phone in my purse. I pulled it out, desperate for distraction. A new message from Blake. Don't talk to anyone about finances until we meet. Very important. I'll explain. My pulse kicked. Ethan stepped closer, narrowing the space between us. Funny thing, he murmured, lowering his voice now. Ran into Mark a few weeks ago. Fine young man. Takes after his old man, doesn't he? My stomach turned cold. You talked to Mark? Sure did. Over drinks. We had ourselves a nice little chat. Surprised me, though. Thought you'd have told him more by now. Every word curled like smoke, seeping into the cracks of my panic. Told him what? I demanded, though part of me already knew. Ethan smirked. About the trust, of course. About what Jake left behind. The world tilted. My fingers tightened around my phone. Good to see you, darling, Ethan said smoothly, already guiding his companion toward the revolving doors. Maybe we'll catch up proper one of these days. Don't get too lost in the shuffle. And just like that he was gone. Like a shadow slipping into the crowd. I stood frozen, my heart racing so loud I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to chase him, to demand answers, but Blake's warning echoed louder than the roar of traffic. Don't talk to anyone. The TSA woman touched my elbow gently. Ma'am? You okay? I blinked at her, forcing my lips into a stiff smile. I will be. But even as I climbed into the back of a rideshare car and watched the airport fade in the rearview mirror, the questions gnawed at me. What had Ethan told Mark? How long had my son known? And why had my own family left me behind so easily? The driver adjusted the radio. A country ballad filled the silence, all twang and heartbreak, and I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger. A woman carrying more ghosts than luggage. When we pulled into downtown traffic, the sun caught on the glass towers, making them burn like fire. I clutched the lawyer's address in my hand. If there were answers, they'd be there. But deep down I already knew this. My life had been split open at Gate B22, and nothing would ever fit back the same. Still, I straightened my back, lifted my chin, and told myself the truth. This isn't the end of the story. Not yet. The rideshare dropped me in front of a tall glass building that looked nothing like the Nashville I'd grown up with. It wasn't the kind of place where you'd expect a lawyer to have his office, too polished, too modern, like it belonged in Atlanta or Dallas. I smoothed my sweater and tried to steady my hands as I stepped inside. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish and ambition. A receptionist in a sleek black blazer greeted me with a smile that felt rehearsed. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" I swallowed. "I left a message for Mr. Henderson. He told me to come." Her smile flickered when she heard the name. "Of course. One moment." She picked up the phone, murmured something into the receiver, and then nodded. "Take the elevators to the 10th floor. His associate will meet you." The elevator hummed softly, its mirrored walls forcing me to look at myself from every angle. I saw a woman trying too hard to look like she belonged, her shoulders squared but her eyes still wide with grief. I pressed my lips together until the doors opened. A young man in a navy suit was waiting at the end of the hallway. His tie was slightly crooked, his hair too long for the formality of the place. He extended a hand. "Mrs. Monroe? I'm Daniel. Blake's tied up in court, but he asked me to sit with you until he's free." I shook his hand, grateful for the warmth of it. I don't even know where to start." "Let's go into the conference room," he said gently. "We'll figure it out together." The room was colder than I expected. Long mahogany table, leather chairs, a wall of windows that looked out over the city like it was something to conquer. I sat at the far end, clutching my purse while Daniel opened a folder. "Blake said you might have questions about your husband's estate," he began. The word estate hit me like a foreign language. Jake and I never use words like that. We said the house, the car, the savings account. Estate was for people with lake houses and summer homes, not for a couple who'd clipped coupons and painted their own porch. I cleared my throat. "Jake mentioned some paperwork last spring. He said Blake helped him set up something, a trust?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, I've seen the documents. Jake set up a revocable trust in your name. It holds the house, the joint savings, and a few other assets." I blinked. "But Mark and Tanya told me everything had to go through probate, that it could take months, maybe years." Daniel's brows knitted. "That's not correct. A properly funded trust bypasses probate entirely. The assets pass directly to the trustee." My heart lurched. "So you're telling me I already own it? The house, the savings?" "Yes," he said, flipping through the pages. "It's all yours. That was Jake's intention. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of." Tears stung my eyes, but they weren't the kind I could let fall. They were hot, furious tears that burned with betrayal. Then why would my son, why would Tanya tell me otherwise? Daniel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes, when money is involved, family members assume they know what's best. Or they try to influence outcomes." Influence outcomes? What a polite way to say lie. My hands trembled as I set my purse on the table. "I sold Jake's pearls to pay for that trip," I whispered. "They told me it was a group effort. I thought they wanted me there. But they only wanted what I could give." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened." The door opened and suddenly Blake was there. Taller than I remembered, his hair grayer, but his presence filled the room the same way Jake always said it would. He crossed to me quickly and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're here. Good." I swallowed hard. "Blake, what's going on? Why didn't Jake tell me all this?" He sighed, lowering himself into the chair across from me. "Because he thought he had more time. He didn't want to burden you while he was still healthy. He wanted it to be simple. When the time came, you'd be protected." "Protected?" I repeated. "From who?" Blake's eyes darkened. From anyone who might try to take advantage. Your husband knew his brother. He knew Ethan would circle like a vulture when he smelled opportunity. And he worried that Mark might not be as strong as he hoped. The name hit me like a stone in the chest. Mark. My voice cracked. You think my son? I don't think, Blake interrupted, firm but not unkind. I know Ethan reached out to him. I know they met. And I know Ethan has been sniffing around the trust documents. He doesn't have access, but he'll try to make Mark his way in. I shook my head slowly, denial rising like a tide. Mark wouldn't, he's my son. Blake leaned forward. I'm not saying he doesn't love you. But grief, money, and influence, that's a dangerous mix. Ethan knows how to exploit it. Jake set this up so you wouldn't have to depend on anyone's goodwill. But it only works if you stand firm. My chest tightened. The betrayal I felt at the airport was suddenly sharper, heavier. So what do I do? Blake slid a document across the table. First, we secure the trust. Legally, you are the sole trustee. We'll make sure no one, no son, no daughter-in-law, no estranged uncle, can touch what's yours. Then we decide how much you want Mark to know. The words tasted bitter. How much you want Mark to know? Since when did protecting myself mean keeping secrets from my own child? I can't lie to him, I whispered. You don't have to lie, Blake said softly. But you don't owe him every truth either. Not right now. Not when he's under Ethan's shadow. I closed my eyes and Jake's voice came back to me, clear as the day he said it. Don't quit just because it hurts. Look it in the face and decide who you are. When I opened my eyes, my voice was steadier. Fine. Secure the trust. Whatever it takes. Blake nodded. Good. And Mrs. Monroe, one more thing. You might want to change the locks on the house. The suggestion stunned me. You think it's that bad? I think, Blake said carefully, that when people believe you have nothing, they treat you one way. And when they learn you have something, they treat you another. You need to be ready. A chill ran through me. I pictured Tanya's practiced smile, Mark's evasive eyes, Ethan's cruel laugh. And suddenly I wasn't sure if the greatest danger was what I'd lost, or what I still had left. The city stretched out beyond the windows, bright and merciless. I tightened my grip on the pen Blake had handed me, and I signed where he pointed. The moment the ink dried, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just a widow abandoned at Gate B22. I was a woman with choices. A woman with power my family didn't know about. But with power comes exposure. And I had the strangest sinking feeling that the moment I walked out of that office, the real storm would begin. I left Blake's office with a folder clutched to my chest, and a tremor in my legs that had nothing to do with the elevator ride. The glass door sighed open onto afternoon light, and I stood on the sidewalk for a breath too long, watching traffic thread itself past like a needle through cloth. The world looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Power is quiet at first. It sits in your hands like a bird you're afraid to scare off. Change the locks, Blake had said, and I hated that I understood why. I took a rideshare home, the driver talking into his headset about a cousin's baby shower, while I stared out the window and counted lights. Nashville rolled by in pieces. Muraled walls, barbecue joints with lines out the door. A church with a sign that read God knows and then the rest of the sentence flickering. As we turned onto my street, my house rose at the end like a familiar letter I hadn't dared open. The porch light was off. Someone had stacked the recycling wrong. The lid stood open like surprise. I paid the driver and stood there a second with the folder tucked under my arm, breathing in cut grass and memory. Jake had planted the maple by the walk. He said it would take its own sweet time, and it had, and somehow that had felt reassuring. Now its shadow touched the porch steps like a hand. Inside smelled like lemon cleaner and the faint spice of cinnamon. A ghost of Jake singing off-key as he searched the cabinet. I set the folder on the kitchen table and touched the edge of his mug where I'd left it, because some superstitions aren't meant to be broken. The quiet held me like a glass of water you drink too fast. Necessary but painful. Then I got to work. The locksmith arrived in under an hour. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a kind mouth. Ex-husband trouble? She asked as she unloaded her bag. Family, I said. The word tasted complicated. She nodded like the answer was universal. I watched her replace the deadbolt on the front door. Then the back, then the garage. The clicks and turns sounded like punctuation, periods where there had once been commas. When she finished, she handed me 2 new keys and a receipt. Keep one on you. Hide the other someplace mean, she advised. Not under a pot. Make folks work for it. I tucked one key in my pocket and slipped the other into a small zippered pouch at the back of the spice drawer, behind the turmeric and the grief. When the locksmith left, the house felt both safer and somehow more exposed, like a wound under new skin. I made tea because that's what you do when you don't know what to do. I poured it into Jake's mug and then, because I couldn't, into my own. I took the folder to the table, opened it like I was praying, and read the trust papers again. My name. The house. The savings. The language thick as honey and twice as sticky. There was also a letter paperclip to the back, Blake's handwriting. Call me before you speak to Mark. Timing matters. As if summoned, my phone buzzed. Mark. Landed. You good? A spark of anger flared. I almost wrote back what I wanted to say. You left me at the airport like an old shoe, and now you ask if I'm good? Instead I typed, home. Then, before I could think better of it, we need to talk. Come by tonight. The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Mark. Tanya has dinner with her mom. Tomorrow better? I stared at the screen. My throat tightened. Me? Tonight. He didn't argue. Mark, 8. I set the phone down and listened to the house breathe. I touched the photo of Jake on the mantel, the one where he's squinting into the lake sun, hat crooked, smile easy. I'm doing it, I told him. And I wasn't sure if I meant protecting the trust or holding our son accountable. Maybe both. Maybe that's what doing it looks like at my age, choosing the hard thing, then sitting still until your hands stop shaking. At 6:30, a car slowed out front. My stomach clenched until I saw it wasn't Mark's. It was a sedan I didn't recognize, windows tinted too dark for a neighborhood that still borrowed sugar. A figure sat inside for a moment, then pulled away. The maple leaves trembled and settled. I locked the door again even though I'd done it twice already. While the sky shifted from late sun to soft blue, I took out the box from the hall closet. It was nothing special. A shoebox with a rubber band around it, but it held every fragile thing I'd been ignoring since the funeral. Sympathy cards, the obituary clipped from the paper, the small heavy church bulletin with Jake's name printed in bold. Beneath those, a faded envelope with my name in Jake's block letters. It wasn't sealed. I had seen it the week after we buried him, and hadn't had the strength to open it then. I opened it now. 2 pieces of paper and a small brass key slid into my palm. One page held a list in Jake's careful hand. Blake Trust. Bank Box 312. Maples, property tax due in June. Call Harold about the gutters. Don't let Ethan in the house. The last line underlined twice. I laughed then, a short sound that felt like breaking ice. Always the gutters, I whispered, though my eyes burned at don't let Ethan in the house. The other paper was a note. Babe, if you're reading this first, I didn't get to go over it with you the way I planned. That's on me. I thought I had time. We never think the regular Tuesday will be the last Tuesday, but here we are. You're stronger than you think. Don't let my brother make you forget it. Don't let money make you doubt it. Blake knows what to do. Trust yourself. Trust him if you can't trust yourself yet. And if Mark loses his way, give him a chance to find it, but don't hand him the map. 10 more years, then 10 more after that. I meant it. I still do, in the way that counts now. I love you. Jay. I pressed the paper to my chest. The small brass key glinted in my palm, stamped with the bank's name. Box 312. A place I hadn't known existed yesterday. A place Ethan might know about if he'd been sniffing around. I slid the key into the little zippered pouch with the spare house key and closed it tight. At 7:58, headlights swept across the living room. I stood, wiped my hands on my jeans, and squared my shoulders because my mother taught me that posture writes headlines. Mark came in with his own key, the one I would collect by the end of the night. He looked tired in a way that wasn't about the flight. He hugged me with an awkwardness that belonged to men who think affection is a favor. Mom, he said, smiling too much. You look good. Do I? I said, already tired of pretending. We need to talk. He followed me into the kitchen. Is this about the airport? He tried on a scolded tone. You really should have said something earlier about the ticket. Tanya thought you wanted to stay longer. Maybe see Aunt Ruth. Don't do that. My voice surprised both of us. It was calm and iron flat. Don't rewrite the thing that happened while I was still standing in it. He blinked. Okay. He put his hands up, palms out. Look, I didn't handle it right. I'm sorry. He stared at the table, then back at me. It's just things have been stressful. Money. Money, I repeated, tasting the word like a bad peach. Whose money, Mark? His jaw worked. Mom. You told me I had to wait for probate, I said. That it could take months. You told me I should sell the pearls to help with the trip because we were all pitching in. You lied. Color rose in his face. I didn't lie. That's what Ethan said. The name slashed the air. Ethan. Mark flinched and then straightened with stubbornness I recognized. Uncle Ethan said Dad didn't get the chance to set everything up. He said there was confusion. And you know how Dad procrastinated. Stop. The word came out low and final. Your father did not procrastinate when it came to protecting me. Mark looked away. Ethan's been helping me understand things. I thought. That's the problem, I said, stepping closer. You thought with his words. Silence folded over us. The clock on the wall clicked its steady click like a cheap metronome. Outside, a car crept by, slow enough to notice. I met with Blake, I said. The trust is valid. The assets are mine. There is no probate for what your father put in my name. Mark's mouth opened, closed. Blake. He swore under his breath, a habit he picked up from friends who wanted to sound like men. So you're what, locking me out? I'm locking Ethan out. I held his gaze until I saw the flinch. And anyone who walks in under his coat. That's not fair. He snapped, a child again for a second. I'm your son. And I am your mother. My voice softened, and that felt more dangerous. I am the woman your father loved for 42 years. I am the person he trusted to carry this house when he couldn't. He wrote it down, Mark. I tapped the letter on the table with my finger. He warned me about Ethan. He asked me not to hand you the map. He stared at the paper like it might reattach itself to him. Let me see that. No, I said, and the refusal shocked him. It shocked me how good it felt to say it. Not tonight. His shoulders sagged. He rubbed his forehead as if thinking was manual labor. Tanya's going to lose it, he muttered. Her mom just put a deposit down on the condo in Sarasota for next spring, and she was counting on. On what? I asked. On my widowhood being a revenue stream? He winced. And then unexpectedly he sat. He put both hands on the table and stared at them like they belonged to someone else. I'm not proud of today, he said quietly. I held very still. The house seemed to lean in with me. I was scared, he said. After Dad. After the hospital bills and the kids and work, I felt like I was drowning. Ethan made it sound like there was a way to, make things smoother. He said Dad never trusted him, but that didn't mean he didn't have good advice. He bought me a drink and, he stopped, the sentence cracking. I messed up. I breathed out something that wasn't forgiveness but wasn't far from it. Then fix it, I said. Start by giving me your house key. His eyes snapped up. Mom. Your house key, I repeated, holding out my hand. It shook and I didn't hide it. He looked at my hand for a long beat and then reached into his pocket. The key was warm from his skin. He placed it on my palm and then pulled his hand back fast, as if the metal had bitten him. This feels awful, he said, small now. It is awful, I said, and that truth sat between us like a third person. But it's not permanent. Trust can be earned back. Not from Ethan. From you. He nodded once, shaky. Okay. He stood like he was older than me. I'll tell Tanya. His phone buzzed. He glanced and then turned the screen toward me without meaning to. Ethan. How'd it go? Tell your mother I can stop by tonight. Might as well make this clean. I stared at the words until they blurred. When I looked at Mark, the shame on his face was naked as a bruise. I didn't text him, he said quickly. He keeps checking. Block him, I said. Right now. He nodded and moved his thumbs. He didn't show me the result, but I heard the little sound phones make when you silence something for good, and I let myself believe him. We stood there, two people who loved the same dead man and had hurt each other in his absence, and tried to remember how to be kind and strong at the same time. I made us both tea because that's the closest thing I know to a ritual that heals. We didn't drink it. We held the cups and let the steam touch our faces like hands. When Mark left, he hugged me differently with his ribs in it. On the porch he paused. "I'm sorry," he said again, and this time it reached me. "I'll fix this." "I hope so," I said. "Drive safe." I watched his taillights disappear down the street, then closed the door, slid the chain and stood in the foyer breathing like I'd run a mile. The house hummed around me, the fridge kicking on, the old pipes clinking like distant coins. I picked up Jake's letter again and traced the heavy underline beneath, "Don't let Ethan in the house." My phone vibrated on the table with a text from an unknown number. Unknown. "Nice locks. Cute. Open up." I stared at it, the words cool and wrong against my skin. A second ping followed. Unknown. "We can do this the easy way, sweetheart. Or the way the court will hate reading about." Footsteps scraped on the front porch. Slow, deliberate. The maple leaves shivered though there was no wind. I moved toward the peephole, heart hammering, and saw only shadow. A figure standing just off-center where the porch light didn't quite reach. Another sound then, not from the front but from the side, metal touching metal. The garage. I grabbed the phone with one hand and Jake's brass key with the other. As if either could ward off what comes when you've taken your dignity back, and someone decides that's theft. The back door rattled. A laugh. A soft, spoiled thing, slipped through the seam and every hair on my arms rose. "Mrs. Monroe?" A voice called, oily as a spill. "It's me. Family." I stepped backward into the kitchen, the new keys cold in my fist, the letter warm against my heart, and listened as the garage door, the one we just rekeyed, shuddered like someone had found a way I hadn't guarded yet. Then very clearly from the darkness on my porch. "Open up, Blake's widow. We need to talk." The laugh slid under the door again, oiled and confident. My whole body tensed like I was holding a live wire. For a heartbeat I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe. Then Jake's voice from that old note echoed in my chest. "Don't let Ethan in the house." I gripped the phone and whispered, "God, give me steady hands." The knob rattled once, then stopped. Silence. But silence with Ethan was never safety, it was calculation. I backed into the kitchen, my pulse in my ears, the folder with the trust paper still open on the table like evidence in a trial I hadn't agreed to attend. I dialed Blake. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Monroe?" "He's here." My voice cracked, but I forced the words out. "On my porch. He knows about the locks." Blake swore under his breath. "Stay inside. Call the police if he tries to force his way in. Don't talk to him. Do you hear me?" Not a word. As if Ethan could hear Blake himself, his voice came again through the door, soft and coaxing. "Come on, darlin'. Let's make this easy. You don't need all that stress. Just open the door and I'll explain how this can go smooth for everybody." I pressed the phone harder to my ear. "He's saying he wants to explain." "That's how he works," Blake said sharply. "Words first. Pressure second. Theft last. Do not let him in. I'll be there as soon as I can." But when I peeked through the window, Ethan was already moving off the porch, sauntering toward the street. His hands in his pockets. His whistle sharp, almost cheerful. He slipped into a car waiting with its engine purring. And then he was gone like smoke on wind. Relief came but not comfort. Relief feels like stepping off a boat onto shaky land. You're upright, but the world still tilts. I sat at the kitchen table, both hands covering Jake's letter. I could still feel Ethan's voice crawling under my skin. An hour later, Mark called. His voice was low, uncertain. "Mom? Did he come by?" I swallowed hard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because he texted me 10 minutes ago. Said you and he had an understanding now." Mark's voice broke on the word. "Mom, I swear I didn't." "He didn't get in," I said flatly. "The locks held." Mark exhaled audibly. "I don't know what he's playing at, but—" He stopped. I could hear Tanya in the background, her voice sharp like cut glass. "Mom, I need to come by tomorrow. Just me. Can we talk? Without her?" I hesitated. My heart wanted to say yes. My head heard Blake's warning. Timing matters. "We'll see," I said carefully. I'll let you know. That night I didn't sleep. Every creak of the house was a warning. Every sweep of headlights across the wall sent me stiff in bed. I clutched Jake's brass key like a talisman until dawn. By morning I was raw and tired, but a strange kind of strength had settled in. Maybe that's what survival feels like, not courage, just the refusal to surrender. I made coffee, put on Jake's old flannel and called Blake first thing. He listened quietly as I recounted every detail. The knock, the laugh, the words, the car waiting at the curb. When I finished, he said, "Then it's exactly what I feared. He's trying to shake you, get you to doubt yourself before we can file the protective order. We'll start paperwork today. You'll need to testify if it comes to that." The thought made my stomach twist. But I said, "I'll do it." By afternoon, the paperwork was in motion. By evening, I was back at home, the house heavy with silence again. I microwaved soup and pretended it tasted like food. I turned the TV on for company but couldn't hear a word over the buzz in my chest. At 9 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. Unknown. "You think paper will stop me? Ask Blake how long a piece of paper lasts in court. Better yet, ask your son." My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I blocked the number, set the phone face down on the table and whispered out loud, "Not tonight. Not again." But deep down I knew it wasn't over. Ethan had tested the locks. Next he'd test me. And as I turned out the lights and climbed into bed, I realized the cruelest truth. He wasn't just after Jake's money. He was after my peace. And I couldn't afford to lose either. I didn't plan to see Ethan again. Not face to face. Not outside my nightmares. But life doesn't always ask what you plan. It just delivers the moment and dares you to stand up in it. 2 weeks after that night, Blake called. "The hearing's set," he said. "Protective order. It'll be quick, but he might show up to contest. Are you ready?" "No," I said truthfully. "But I'll be there." The courthouse smelled of old wood and disinfectant, a mix of history and bleach. I wore Jake's flannel under my coat, the fabric against my skin like armor. Mark sat beside me, his knee bouncing nervously, while Tanya stayed home with her mother. Blake leaned in, calm as a stone. "Whatever he says, don't answer. Let me speak. You just hold your ground." And then Ethan walked in. He didn't look like a man about to be judged. He looked like he owned the room. His suit was too sharp, his smirk too rehearsed. He winked at me as he passed, and my stomach lurched. But I didn't flinch. I folded my hands together and kept my chin high, the way my mother taught me. The world reads posture like a headline. The judge entered, gray-haired and brisk, flipping through papers. "Mr. Henderson, your counsel?" Ethan shook his head. "Representing myself, Your Honor. Won't take long. This is all just family business." Family. That word again, stretched and poisoned. Blake stood. "Your Honor, my client has been harassed, threatened and intimidated. We have phone records. Witness accounts. He appeared at her residence uninvited. She has reason to fear for her safety and her property." Ethan laughed softly, shaking his head. "Your Honor, I'm her brother-in-law. We've known each other for decades. I stopped by to offer help, to check on her. I didn't realize kindness was illegal now." My pulse thudded in my ears. Lies have a sound. You can hear the hollow in them if you listen. Blake slid a printout across the table. Text messages from an unknown number traced to Mr. Henderson's phone. Threatening language. Clear intimidation. The judge scanned them, lips pressed thin. Ethan shifted, but his smirk didn't falter. "Jokes. Out of context. She knows I wouldn't hurt her." The judge looked at me then. "Mrs. Monroe, do you feel threatened?" The room fell silent. My throat tightened, but I remembered Jake's words in that letter. "Don't let money make you doubt it. Don't hand him the map." I stood. My knees wobbled, but my voice didn't. "Yes, Your Honor. I feel threatened. He came to my home at night. He rattled my doors. He laughed while he did it. He wants me afraid. And I still am. But I won't let him in my house, my life, or my peace. Not anymore." The judge studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Protective order granted. Effective immediately." The gavel cracked. The sound echoed through my bones like a door slamming shut. Ethan's smile faltered for the first time. He leaned toward me as they ushered us out, his voice low, meant only for me. "This isn't finished, sweetheart. You'll need me sooner than you think." I looked him dead in the eye. I survived burying my husband. I survived being left at an airport with nothing. I survived you on my porch. I don't need you. Not ever. Mark touched my arm, guiding me out. His face was pale, but there was something new in his eyes, something close to respect. "Mom," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I should have been the one protecting you." I squeezed his hand. "Then start now. And don't stop." Outside, the air smelled cleaner, brighter. Maybe it was just me breathing deeper. The courthouse steps stretched before us, sunlight warming the stone. For the first time in weeks, I felt taller. Not safer, not yet, but taller. Back home, I unlocked the new locks with my new key. I stepped inside and set Jake's letter back on the mantel beside his picture. The brass bank key sat in the spice drawer where I'd hidden it. My house. My name on the papers. My story still mine to tell. I made tea and sat at the table, the steam curling between me and the sunlight. For the first time since the funeral, I let myself breathe without rushing. I thought of Jake's voice humming off-key. I thought of the boy Mark used to be and the man he still could become. And I thought of myself, not as a widow left behind, not as a mother discarded, but as a woman who stood in her own kitchen and claimed her life back. Grief had moved in like an uninvited guest. Betrayal had knocked on my door. Fear had rattled the locks. But I was still here. I sipped the tea slowly and whispered into the quiet, "This is my house. This is my life. And I'm not leaving." The words settled in the walls like nails hammered deep. For the first time in months, I believed them.